So often in history, when we talk about military technology, we will talk about swords or pole arms. But a weapon that is usually neglected is the bow. And today I want to talk about the bow that I think is the greatest bow that existed in history, and that is the Manchu bow. I'm going to talk about three aspects: the draw weight of the Manchu bow, its draw length, and its string bridges. So first of all, the draw weight. Now, Manchu bows are made of three layers, and it's a horn bow, so one of those layers is horn. The outer layer, which you can see in the bottom photo, is made of sinew, and it's got a pretty beautiful motif painted on there. The inner layer is made of water buffalo horn, and it's this black material you see in the second photo. The middle layer, or the core, which is sandwiched between the sinew and the water buffalo horn, is made of Chinese bamboo. Now, the thickness and stiffness of these respective materials allow it a certain draw weight, as well as the total deformation of the bow from its unstrung shape. Now, the unstrung shape of this particular Manchu bow is recurve, but there are Manchu bows whose unstrung shape is reflex, as seen in this example here. And the reason why they were so curved when unstrung is because it saved them, for example, when you were making a reflex bow such as this one, is that it saved bowyers the amount of materials that they would need to make a recurve bow such as this one with the same draw weight. For example, if I made a um, if, for example, this recurve bow here, it has a draw weight of 50 pounds. Now, if I make it into a reflex bow and I give it a more curved shape, so if I give it a more curved shape when unstrung, so if I made it into a reflex bow, then that 50 pounds would become a 95 pounds because there's more deformation to the bow when you're going to be drawing it. Second point, and this is the most important reason as to why I think the Manchu bow is the best bow in history, and that's a draw length. Now, Manchu bows are pretty long, and I'm especially for horn bows. And I'm not talking about the draw length. I'm talking about the overall length. This one is 176 centimeters, but on average, Manchu bows were 150 centimeters. And what this size meant is that Manchu bows had had long limbs. Again, especially long limbs for a horn bow, because horn bows were usually very small. So it had very long limbs and uh, reminiscent of reminiscent of horn bows. They also had ciyas or ears, which are these things you see here. And that and the ciyas were pretty long as well. And the longer the ciya, the more your limbs curved when you drew the bow. And of course, long length also means that you can draw your bow farther. And so Manchu war bows had an average draw length of 36 inches compared to English war bows that had a draw length of 30 inches, even though English war bows were longer. But that's just because Manchu war bows had siyas, which helped helped the bow's limbs curve more, and so you could draw it to a longer length. And the average draw weight of Manchu war bows was 133 pounds, which is lower than the average draw weight of English war bows, which averaged 160 pounds. But in terms of bow power, what mattered more, a lot more, was the draw length. And Manchu warbows, although they only had on average 6 inches more of draw length than the English warbow, 6 inches in terms of draw length is a lot. And this is further proven by the fact that historically, Manchu warbows used heavier arrows than English warbows. Manchu warbows used arrows that weighed 2,000 grains versus English warbows that used arrows that weighed 1,250 grains. And the reason why you need to use heavier arrows for more powerful bows is that when, for example, if you shoot a lighter arrow using a very powerful bow, what's going to happen is that a lot of the energy is not going to be transferred to the arrow, it's going to be transferred to the bow, is very bad. It's kind of like dry firing a bow. You never fire a bow without an arrow. It damages the bow. And the second point is because if you shoot a lighter arrow with a more powerful bow, when the arrow, yes, it's going to travel faster and further, but when it's going to hit the opponent, hit the target, it might shatter because it's light, it's thin, and you shot it with a lot of power. So that's why you need heavier arrows for more powerful bows. Third point is Manchu war bows. They took the technology of string bridges. String bridges, they allow the archer to start pulling the limbs from a less curved state. So as you can see here, the limbs, the siyas or the ears are not aligned with a bowstring. So that means that the bow limbs are less curved. Now if you take a look at a bow without bowstring without string bridges, you can see that the siyas or ears are aligned with the bowstring, which means that the limbs are more curved. And but when you start pulling the bow when the limbs are at a less curved state, then you're going to have a lighter initial draw or initial draw weight. And what this allows is it allows for a better buildup of arm strength while drawing the bow, making for a smoother and easier draw.